And you're
He's
like,
doing
"Oh,
stuff with the body that you're like, "Oh, no.
you shouldn't be able to do that."
Why your face look like that?"
But you see all the tentacles inside their face, like, oof,
Mhm.
the effects are very silly, but it's so fun because you just see him like and you're like,
Yeah.
"No! No! Don't
Yeah.
do that with your body and your face, Edgar." Hi, I'm Gabe,
And I'm Kat.
and
And
we're
we're
the
the
ghouls
ghouls
next
next
door.
door.
Talk about spooky stuff.
Yeah. Again, we're doing it. Woo.
Yeah, all day, every day. No, every week at the very
At least,
least.
yeah.
And we are the media literacy show from a horror lens where we talk about the real life, historical, and out of this world reasons behind our cinematic fears. And we, in our New Year, New Me, are talking about some alien imposters. We've done that
Classic.
before.
Mhm.
We covered the faculty in a
Which
live
is
show.
so fun. What a
Oh, what a
fun
great,
film that was.
yeah.
I just
Wasn't it a
remembered it as a
great
Terminator run
episode?
guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's great. 10 out of
Yeah.
10.
It was yeah, it's such a fun that is a really fun film, and that episode was really fun because it was live, and we had people, like, you know, tell us how you would know if your partner or someone you cared about was an imposter.
Yeah.
It
When
was
the
great.
imposter is, like, still looks exactly like the person, which
Yeah,
is
when
not
it's
what we see.
yeah.
So where you're like, "Oh, that's definitely not my neighbor."
Yeah.
And it's very obviously not them, unless you have bad eyesight.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, because originally, so when we were planning out New Year, New Me, I was like, "Oh, it'd be fun to have another Imposters episode," and we were gonna do the
Mhm.
thing because we haven't, and it's a
Yeah.
classic, right? And
Yeah.
so we had every intention to do that until someone was like, "Have you heard of this film called Slashback, which is indigenous and it's kind of like Attack the Block?" And I was like, "Okay, say less. We're doing that."
Yeah, we're doing that instead. So we did it. It was
Yeah.
good. It was a really good movie. It was fun. I really enjoyed it and the presentation and the, like, quirkiness and coolness to it. It
Yeah,
was
and it
dope.
definitely became less about like, what do you do when someone you love is an imposter, and more about like loving yourself and your community and your identity,
100%.
which is way more on topic than what the thing would have been
Yeah.
exactly. This one now is like way more related to what we.
What our, like, series specifically is about, which
Yeah,
is
so
identity, because new
it,
year, new me, you know?
yeah, so who is me?
Mhm.
And what are they doing new? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I highly recommend listening to our live it is live, so, like,
Audio
the audio
quality
quality is not the best.
ain't the best, yeah.
It
But
was
it's fun.
pre-COVID, so we were out at a bar, a tattooed mom, miss it, where we a part of the podcast festival,
Mhm.
which hasn't been here for a minute. Miss them. Miss live shows. We did do a live show last year, which was nice.
Yeah.
So here's to New Year, New Us. Do we get another live show this year? We'll see. If
Yeah, we will see.
it
I've
gets so
already I
hot.
mean, I'm not trying to get COVID again, but I've already gotten it at this point, so I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
Yeah. I just feel like a lot of people are like, "Okay, yeah, most people have
I
gotten
don't wanna
it."
do it again, but, like, maybe it wouldn't be as bad, I don't know.
Yeah, not wishing COVID on anyone, but live shows are great, and if you haven't seen the film Slashback, I highly, highly recommend it. It was an easy watch, it was on Shudder, it has an amazing, phenomenal soundtrack. I immediately Shazammed, like, the intro song. I was like, "Wow, this is a really great song," and I sent it to my good friend Jeff, who's been on our show a few
Mhm.
times, and he was like, "Yeah, I shared this with you." Like, a long time ago. Not in, like, it wasn't in any condescending way, it was just like, "Yeah, I love that song. You were right to know that I love it because I shared that with you," and I was like, "I
You're
am
like,
sorry.
"Oh, yeah."
I am the worst." And he's like, "No, no, it's cool."
It is a
But I
very
was
Jeff
spot on.
song. It's very funny.
It's so good. Yeah, if just listen like, look up Hallucination, and they're so fun. They are such a jam, and it was just like, it blends, like, the kind of, like, breathy, like, gasping that they
Mhm.
have, and then it mixes in with, like, really phenomenal instrumentals, and I found quite a few, like, Inuit, like, performers that have this
Mhm.
very unique like, they're just so rad, and, like, they're, just, like, the way that they, like, deliver the music, their instruments are really cool, like, clothes are really cool, I'm like, "This is so awesome, we need more of this." Like, I'm
Yeah.
tired of the same people making music here that, like, I think we've had enough pop, you know?
Yeah.
So, highly recommend that, highly recommend this film, and, yeah, if anything, I hope it inspires you to do some research into the culture, fascinating, just, like, their folklore and history and things like that, that, this is the kind of film where, like, similarly, when we've covered films that are in these cultures that we're just not familiar with, it really,
Mhm.
like, inspires us to be like, I wanna know more because I just find it, like, interesting. It's not something that I know, it's not something that I've lived with, and it's
Mhm.
just a beautiful, like, look into another world, another life, and, um
Yeah. And also just, like, learning about it is its own little form of what is it called? Not like protest, but, like, the people have gone to great lengths to erase
Mhm.
information about these cultures. So, like,
Mhm.
it's a little form of, "Ha I'm learning about it, and you didn't want me to."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and, like, keeping those stories going. Yeah, especially,
mhm.
like, we, had covered Canadian Indigenous cultures, which has their own horrifying backstory, right? We've done two Jeff
Mhm.
Barnaby films, rest in peace, and one of being Rhymes for Young Ghouls, which definitely had
Mhm.
I had a little pang of feeling when with a certain situation that happens in this film, but there's definitely like a history that comes with having survived during like the point in time where they were just blatantly trying to erase their culture, like stealing their
Yeah.
children to whitewash them and, have them speak a certain way, erase this whole thing. So it's like trying to juggle both that, and that's happened like everywhere, like that just like there's so many
Yeah.
cultures that have had to fight to get back to their roots, and so
Mhm.
um, it's yeah, I just find it really fascinating. I love learning about new things and also really understanding the strength that it is to go back and just, like, look that in the face and
Yeah.
evaluate it yourself.
For
Just
sure.
super
Yeah, this is a great movie. Highly recommend. Indeed.
Yes, yeah. Well, why don't I tell you about it?
Do it.
So like I said, watch the film. I will have spoilers. I'm gonna tell you what happens in the film, but even still, I will say, like, there's no, like, twists, right? You
Mhm.
get what and you won't be upset because it is just really it's a fun film, and a lot of those like, it's really more emotional, so, like, as you're watching it, you get really connected to these characters, that's what you're gonna find value in, and also, like, the monster is fun. It's, like,
Mhm.
such a creative, like, spooky thing, that like, just watch it, you're gonna have a fun time. So, Slashback is from 2022, it's brand new, and it is about when Micah and her ragtag friends discover an alien invasion in their tiny Arctic hamlet, it's up to them to save the day. Utilizing their makeshift weapons and horror movie knowledge, the aliens realize you don't mess with girls from Pang. It's
Mhm.
directed by Nyla Inukshuk. And um, at one point, they even say that. They're like, you don't mess with like, no one messes with girls from Pang, which I really loved. But like, that was there. Because it very much is like this group of girls fighting back. They slash
Mhm.
back, slasher, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was like the director said it was like a working title, and she's like, let's just that's what happened, and it's cute.
Mhm. It's definitely cute. I agree.
So Slashback is part coming of age, part John Carpenter's The Thing, with a sprinkling of Attack the Block and all heart. And it follows a band of plucky teens in Pang Their Tongue in Inuit hamlet on the Canadian territory of Baffin Island. And our Indigenous heroines are tasked with protecting their home from an invading force in an alien invasion with gross, fidgeting, not moving right imposters.
Mhm.
It's very much, I put in my script, cue, he's wearing an Edgar suit,
Uh-huh.
joke that I love to make whenever we talk about imposters wearing
Yep.
people's skins. You
Yep.
remember Men in Black?
Yeah, sugar water.
Sugar water. Love it. I don't know why that's one of my favorite things for forever. We should do Men in Black. Anyway,
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
it's about identity, right? Like, when you
Yeah,
find out that different people who were aliens the whole time, like, in their
yeah.
lore, that's um, so that's what the monsters are. Like, if think about, uh D'Onofrio as the Edgar suit. That's kinda
Mhm.
what they look like, but, like, worse.
Yeah, it's definitely
They're
worse,
falling
but
apart. It's definitely worse,
yeah.
but to kinda get you there.
Mhm.
The film opens with a white man and he's doing some ice science,
Yeah,
and, he's got, like, a pole and, like, snow and some data. I don't know what he's doing. He's doing something. He's, like, getting samples. Saw a
yeah.
video recently where they're like, "We found the oldest ice," and I'm like, "But why?" Why do we need to I think
What's
that's
in the
kinda
oldest
cool.
ice? What's in it?
They're like, "Look how far it goes down." I'm like, "Yeah, leave it alone." What are we doing down there?
But the Avatar, Gabe.
I guess,
I
I
know, I'm
found
kidding
it.
with you.
Um,
I'm
well,
rewatching the Avatar show, so
yeah,
that's that's where my brain
we have
is.
to get him. He's the
Yeah,
only one who can
yeah.
save us. Um, so this white man in the Arctic, near this Inuit place, hears a curious sound before promptly exploring in a way that would make Ripley really mad, and
Mhm.
it gets himself face hugged like
Yep.
immediately, and I was like, "What protocol?" Anyway,
It's
this
because
is
he went over and was, like, touching it. I was like, "You don't
yeah.
stop." Obviously, you would do that, but stop it at the same time.
Yeah, it starts out where you're like, "Okay." What I really did appreciate that it kinda I was expecting it to start a little bit more similarly to The Thing with, like, a dog coming up, and it's like, "Ooh, is it a
Mhm.
real dog?" So I like that it instead took, like, a turn into Alien.
Mhm.
So I was like, "Oh, of course." So very fun. There's a lot of, like, nods to, other horror films. Even the monster, like, the wearing the face reminded me of Michael Myers because
Yeah.
that's literally his mask is a human face, right? So
Mhm.
there's all these little things where I'm like, somebody really loves horror.
Yeah.
That's super fun. So this is our introduction to the monster under the ice, and it's something sinister and quite hungry. And when we first meet the girls, they are like any other, stuck in that in-between space of growing up, not quite a teen, but not a kid either. And the girls gather together and decide to go hunting on the mainland, which you learn isn't really like a thing they should be doing. Like
Yeah.
all the adults are like, "Eh, where are you going?" Um,
Yeah, they're not
Micah,
supposed
the
to go by themselves, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, because they are still kids. They're 14, but
Mhm.
when they're 14, you're
You're
like
still a
14
kid.
going on 20, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
Um, so Micah, the lead of the troop, grabs a rifle casually and heads for her family's boat. And following close behind, we have Uki, who's the rambunctious kid with a wild side, Lena, the quiet and sweet friend who's definitely going to grow into the mom friend, and Jessie, who's down to earth and level headed. And if you're watching, I'm dressed as Jessie, and Kat is Micah.
Mhm.
Micah's younger sister, Aju, sneaks her way over as well, showing herself to not be someone easily left behind. Um, she's also like 7 going on 20.
Yeah.
She just wants a cell phone, this poor kid.
Yeah.
So she rides her bike over because you can also get to the mainland from just riding. And she arrives just in time for all hell to break loose. So the girls are practicing aiming, they're sharing like horror stories, like ghost stories,
Yeah.
in this very casual way, before Aju arrives, and she begins yelling for them to get their attention. And one of the girls spots a polar bear in the distance and takes aim. But this polar bear is a little weird. Okay,
Yeah.
its movements are all fidgety and like glitchy, even, and definitely not right. And Uki, always seeking to prove herself, takes aim and fires, only for the bear to set its disturbing eyes upon little Aju. And it charges forward and jumps on Aju, covering her in blood, this like
Yeah.
black gooey blood, as
Yeah.
Uki struggles to reload and take aim. And just in time, they're able to shoot it and run back to their home. They do find that the blood that is on Aju isn't easily removed. It's just like settled there.
Yeah.
That's something that comes back later. Anyway, um, they all agree that something bizarre was going on with this bear, and they hint at it being a Jirak or a Qualpilut. Piluit. Sorry, I do not speak this language natively, or at all. So, but the Drakk and this other creature are like a part of Inuit folklore of these monsters that are kind of like the boogeymen who steal children. So the Drakk are
Yeah.
shapeshifting creatures who kidnap children and abandon them in places that are hidden away and not easy to find. And Kat's going to go over some of those other spooky creatures in their section, um,
Yeah.
including a literal tickle monster.
I don't have
Because
the tickle monster in my section, and I'm sorry, but it is a good one. I saw that one and I was like, "That's great." A lot of them involve stealing children, unfortunately, which does make sense considering what's happening
But
all
that
over.
happens, like, that's
Yeah.
in a lot of different, like, uh in a lot of, folklore is, like, a
Mhm.
lot of it is just, like, kids should be good, and if you're not, something's gonna steal you.
That's
Um,
true, that's true.
since the Tickle Monster's not in your section, I'm gonna mention it. It's called a
Okay.
Mahahaha.
Oh, okay, it is, and I just didn't know it was the tickle monster. Okay, continue, continue, sorry.
Anyway,
It
it is
doesn't
a
even mention tickling in mine, so you tell us what this version that you have.
So so what I found the Mahaha be, and I will include an image that was shared because it's got these long fingers, it's creepy, is described as a grotesque demon who is infamous for tickling people to death with its shockingly frozen touch.
Beautiful.
It's called Mahaha. I think that's amazing. Um, that's why I was like, I really want to do a folklore section or a
Mhm.
series because I'm sure we will find that most of them are like to scare kids into behaving. Like La Llorona, she's just stealing
Yeah.
kids.
I also just like as a warning that there are things
Krampus.
out there that aren't
Yeah,
good.
listen
Be
to
safe, stay in your home,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Don't go where you're not supposed to go. Listen to your parents.
Mhm.
So while they're kind of, pondering if it was a drug, a bunch of kids in Pung begin to gather around to hear the story of the group's run-in with a real life drug before they are unfortunately, though unsurprisingly, accosted by a police officer. Which really was this is where it was giving me the Rhymes for Young Ghouls vibes. Because it definitely was like in Rhymes for Young Ghouls, if the police showed up for something like this, they could take you away to one of the schools. And so that's scary. Luckily, a local woman, and also that police officer was just like a white dude, like out here causing trouble. But luckily, a local woman who is also an officer comes to their rescue, which is nice.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it could have turned into a
Yeah.
different kind of movie.
Mhm.
And we get to spend more time with the girls, the ghouls, the girls, and learn about their lives and personalities. Pang is small and everyone knows everyone and their expectations for these girls. So Lena ends up being grounded for going to the mainland. Um, Clearly, they were not allowed to go there, right?
Mhm.
You get grabbed, right? Uki is off wandering after being dared to return to the bear attack, and she goes in search of Aju's bike and for vengeance. Jesse, we learn, has a crush on a local boy who's this like teen dream. His name is Thomasy. Um, he's got like the flowing hair. It's definitely giving like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, but like
Mhm.
cuter. And he's hosting a party at his house while all the parents and adults in paying go to a super fun line dancing event.
Mhm.
It's like, okay. Or square dancing. They're square dancing. And during these interactions, we learn about the complicated challenge of identity that Micah is struggling with. Her father has taught her to hunt and wishes to instill Inuit values in her, only for her to push them away. Like, she definitely wants to be like a modern kid. And I feel like any story where we're talking about like second generation, like immigrants and things like that, or even just like contemporary woman who
Mhm.
is in this like small town, you're kind of fighting against tradition because to that it's like holding you back, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of complicated feelings that go with that. So she's struggling with that. And when she goes to this party with her friends and Thomas asks about the food she likes, she shrugs off at the any and even shows distaste for any of the traditional food and instead prefers KFC. Right?
Mhm.
She makes a terrible comment about the Inuit fish art in Thomas's house, explaining that it's tired and replicated everywhere. She's just like, people just, draw a fish and then put it up somewhere, blah, blah. It's so tired. Uh, Thomas's like, my mom made that.
Yeah.
So sad. And she
She's
gets
just
really,
too cool for school. She's trying
yeah,
really hard to be cool.
yeah. And of course, like Jesse's kind of like upset about that because it looks like she's trying, like she's not flirting, but that she might be interested in Thomasy.
Mm.
But she, like, called dibs, girls.
Yeah.
Um, so embarrassed, Micah tries to change the subject before they're interrupted by the very loud and very terrified Uki. Um,
Mhm.
she was something else. She was like, we're not playing. Like, I'm gonna let you know
Yeah, she was,
now.
like, ready all the
Like,
time.
you will not believe what I just did. I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah. She had just,
Um,
like, a great confidence about her, for sure.
she really did. She was fun. She was a lot of fun. I could definitely see how she could be a lot,
Yeah,
and
but,
someone
like,
else
tells
a
it like it
lot.
is, you
Yeah.
know?
I get it. So Uki, while she was on her adventure to recover the bike, finds not only the strange polar bear, but other bizarre moving animals. And following close behind them, she's, tracing them, she discovers their alien spaceship of meat. It's like a
Mhm.
meat ship.
Yep.
Really gross. And there's these tentacles that extend from the ship and latch onto their new human victim, which was a nice fisherman from Pang,
Mhm.
and sucks out his blood. And no one deserved that except for the cop. So,
Yeah.
poor guy.
Yeah.
And Uki is then attacked by a polar bear cub, which is cute and terrifying at the same time. She slices it with one of her like really cool knives that she keeps
Mhm.
on her, and she runs away covered in blood. And this is blood that she can't get off. Remember?
Yeah.
And when she storms the party, she explains to everyone that there are aliens coming. And in an attempt to stay relevant and still burning with embarrassment, Micah absolutely lays into Yuki. She unleashes a torrent of incredibly harmful words
Yeah.
in the only way that like young girls can do.
Mhm.
She just like says all this terrible stuff, like digging up Yuki's whole life. And she's like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I'm trying to tell you that
Yeah,
there's
I'm trying to, like,
aliens.
save you from aliens right now.
I'm like, okay, well, let's
Like,
table
now
that.
we're fighting.
Let's table that because we do have some heavy stuff to deal with, but also, um, and then while this is happening, one of the aliens, now donning the gross police officer skin, bursts into the party. Not bursts, he just comes into the party.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do. They start slow to kind of
Yeah.
trick you until you look at them and you're like, that ain't right. Um,
Yeah.
and everyone learns really quickly that the invasion is real and Uki is not lying for attention. And we get some really cool chase scenes and find that Uki is a very innovative and clever survivalist. Like she was really cool.
Mhm.
She was a good final girl. They're all final girls, but she was really cool.
Mhm.
She's like, I'm the bait. You're not allowed to be the bait. I was like, okay, hon, you get it.
Yeah.
Later, Micah tries to get some answers and she asks Uki about the alien pretending not to be an alien, to which Uki responds, yeah, like an Inuk pretending not to be an Inuk, which
Mhm.
was a great diss.
Yeah.
You could see she was like, deserve that. I deserve
Yeah, I was a jerk earlier, you're right.
You're right. And it is clear to her friends how Micah is trying to separate herself from her culture, and become this modern woman. In an interview on Inuit Art Foundation titled Nyla Inuksuk on her new film Slashback, the director explains, in the end, it is a very personal project about what it means to be growing up in a contemporary world as an Indigenous woman. We are the children of residential school survivors dealing with shame in our identities as Indigenous people and dealing with our identities as young women. But of course, I had to throw some aliens in there to make it fun,
Mhm.
which again, I love. I feel like we would be best friends. She does all the things that I love about film. Um,
Yeah.
it's like, here, it has this really great message. It's very important. And also,
Mhm.
there's some cool aliens.
Yeah.
So
Cool
the rest of
flesh monsters, for sure.
monster and like the fidgety, like, oh
Oh,
god,
yeah.
so good. The rest of the film pits the young girls against the Edgar suit wearing aliens as they embrace the power of an Inuk woman, not someone to be messed with. And they find a love for their hometown and decide to save Pang. Because what would this place be without them? And also because no one stands a chance against an Inuk woman. And when they have that moment, it's really sweet and well earned. So they gather weapons, new, old, and traditional, and more. They create plans of action and they fight the invading force. They also put on traditional makeup
Yeah.
because they're like, that's when they're like, you don't mess with an Inuit woman.
Mhm.
That was just like super empowering and fun.
Yeah.
It's like, that's rad. You get into like your war paint and you get to go fight aliens. It's the same excitement that I had when I was watching Attack the Block.
Yeah.
It's
Where
like
they're like, "We're not gonna run, we're gonna fight back."
yeah, yes.
Mhm.
And in the because they know this place, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
the look of the monsters is really well done. It's simple. It's just a talented actor that can move their body in not quite human way, while wearing a person mask. So it's not like
Mhm.
super over the top, but unlike The Thing, these monsters are not good at pretending, only approaching slowly and quietly to disarm the prey before turning back into their more comfortable position, which is, like, on all fours and, like, scuttling
Yeah.
towards you, and, like, sometimes, like, backwards, it's, like, grudgy, um,
Yeah.
and you're
Just
like,
doing
"Oh,
stuff with the body that you're like, "Oh, no.
you shouldn't be able to do that."
Why your face look like that?"
Did you see all the tentacles inside their face? Like, oof.
Mhm.
It is like, it is super silly.
Yeah.
Like, the effects are very silly, but it's so fun because you just see him like and you're like,
Yeah.
"No! No! Don't
Yeah.
do that with your body and your face, Edgar." Um, and, other than the super fun and eerie look of the monsters, there is so much to love, including its location, the folklore, the soundtrack, and of course, the girls. So I wanna get
Mhm.
into a bit about, like, the making of and all these different parts that made this film really unique and fun and just an amazing time, right? So the
Yeah.
location and the community played a very big part in the creation of the film. And every part of the film process, the community and culture seep through both in front of and behind the camera. And Inukshuk cast the young actors by conducting acting workshops locally. Her and an arts organization that supports performing artists in Nunavut called Kagiavut. I'm gonna say that's what it is. Kagiavut. Again, if someone speaks this natively, let me know because it doesn't stick here when I write it out. Helped equip the girls with headshots and videos because they were like learning, like not learning to act, but they were developing their acting skills while they were doing it. Which, like, when you're watching, they are not the best of actors, right? They're not fully seasoned, but there's
Yeah.
so
They're
much
also
intention.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, and they're kids, and I think, like, there's such intentionality in, like, casting them specifically and being able to use this film to give them those like, opportunities is really awesome. And they're
Yeah.
not bad, like, you still get very invested in them, they're fun,
Mhm.
they clearly having a good time, and I think that's great. The girls also helped in developing the fuller story, from short to feature because it started as a short, and they offered their own insight into the characters and their
Oh,
experiences.
that's very cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of like this group process where, like, they'd offer up some suggestions or thoughts, and they were able
Mhm.
to modify it for that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I know, it's so rad. Inixik also said one of the highlights was actually working with the community of Pong. So the other highlight, she says in this interview, was getting to know the community, the people that we met, the people that were on our crew, the people whose houses we lived in, who drove our boats and cars and all these other things. It wouldn't have been possible if there wasn't a chance to film this in Pong, and we had to film in Iqaluit, which she said was, like, really hard to get to, like, even just traveling, and it was kind of expensive too, so there was, like, you had to be really intentional about it. And having the film take place in Pong is a point of pride for director Inuk. In that interview with the Inuit Art Foundation, she explains the challenges but also successes of the shooting location, saying, "We started filming in June of 2019. It's where my nephews are from, and so it was great to see family in Pang. There's 24-hour sunlight."
Yeah.
'Cause it's an Arctic summer. I was like, "What? It's just never not sun?"
Yeah.
Honestly, sounds really lovely. It wasn't the lighting conditions that we were used to, obviously, and the whole movie takes place over the course of a day. And so when we're doing that in Arctic summer, it's a different kind of thing than when you're working with a movie in any other location because you're having to keep on reminding yourself that it never really gets dark. And you have to remind the audience in other ways that time is passing,
Yeah.
which is like kind of like a fun problem to have.
Yeah.
and obviously you don't have the money to be like, Jordan Peele in Nope and make it nighttime. So,
Yeah.
but it was still like we knew it
Yeah.
was the same day, we knew time was passing.
Yeah.
Um, the film had a number of challenges because of the location though, including where folks were staying. So, Inukshuk mentions that there was a housing crisis, that there's not enough homes for the residents. So to add in an extra 60 to 70 people was not feasible. We had to live in the high school for a full 2 months. We had to set up kitchens and have 3 meals a day produced for 60 people out of those kitchens. But it was really, really important to me that we didn't just come in and leave, that we really embraced the fact that we're in this place and hunkered down and just tried to make it the best we could within this infrastructure that we had to create ourselves because it doesn't exist in the community. And I'll mention it and soon, but she kind of hoped that the impact of this film would then continue
Yeah.
on in helping the community.
Uh-huh.
But furthermore, the soundtrack is created by the amazingly talented and hypnotizing duo Hallucination. There's Tim Tool, it's with a two,
Mm.
Toolman Hill and Aaron Bear Witness, who make up the group formerly known as A Tribe Called Red. And when they were A Tribe Called Red, Inixuk had worked with them for an interactive virtual reality music video. And when she began thinking up the film, she reached out. Um, she mentioned something like, they were always asking, like, when are we going to tag team again? Like, when are we gonna meet up?
Yeah.
Well, if it's for my film, then it's gonna happen now. 'Cause
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh, cool, bet." And then they were confirmed before the script was finished. So
Nice.
and it's great because they really did. They have, like, definitely look them up and look up their, like, in their plans for this film because there's, like, one song that I can't find because it was just made for this film. It's the credits, and it's a
Oh, okay.
remix of, like, a traditional song or a song by another band, and they have this person performing, I'm totally blanking on their name, but it was really amazing song. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Where is I want it in real life." So highly recommend, definitely check them out. And ultimately, I think what we find with a film like Slash Back is the beauty of new stories on screen. Okay?
Yeah.
This is why we're not doing The Thing. Sorry, John, I
Yeah.
don't think we've ever done John Carpenter, and I don't think we will.
Yeah.
Um,
That's okay.
which is fine, other people will, and I think
Yeah.
they because yeah, someone should talk about them. Um, but the biggest thing is that we should celebrate these voices, these stories, and these creators. And it's a delight to get a glimpse into a culture that we don't often hear about. Me
Yeah.
personally, I don't. So, except for on my TikTok, because
Yeah.
I like all those artists, I get a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate this film, and I hope that you watch it and learn from it as well. And for director Inuk, the film was an absolute treat to create. And she said, just to get to the point where you can be taking on and directing a feature, being up there at a certain point during filming in Pong, in the beautiful community where we shot and we're walking around, at a certain point, I was like, oh, wow, I'm actually doing this thing. I was working with a bunch of 14-year-old girls and thinking about myself at that age and just how much I loved horror movies. And for me to be up there, I was really doing what I wanted to do when I was a kid. Um,
Mm.
and that love and passion certainly comes through and will hopefully
Mhm.
impact the young actors who are also participating, right? Because now they have this and they can get more options. It's just like how we got Rhymes for Young Ghouls and then she went and did Reservation Dogs. Like,
Yeah.
it's so cool. And also knowing how much the community and culture impacted the creation of it elevated the film for me greatly. And the director
Mhm.
agreed, saying, I hope the impacts that we had on the community were positive. I'm so excited to be able to go back with the finished project and to share it with the community that made it possible. When I see myself represented on screens in ways that I haven't seen myself before, it's meaningful. Even when it's something silly like a Star Wars movie, it's important, I think, to feel seen and represented. I hope this movie
Mhm.
does that for the community. Um, super agree. Like, I
Yeah.
also hope that I wanna see more indigenous horror. That's what I'm putting out there to the ether. And just, 2 side facts that I found while I was writing up the script. The team designed a fake polar bear costume for the actor who did all the monsters, Troy James, uh,
Mhm.
to wear and perform as the bear, because the director had a really, great appreciation for the thing's practical effects, and so she really wanted to give it a shot, but the look on camera was a bit odd, so they went with a CGI bear, and I just really wish I could see the That's
Original, just to, like, see what it looked like,
I
yeah.
think it would kind of been fun, but I totally get it. We have the technology. There's no shame in that. Also, the square dancing is a real thing. So apparently, Inukshuk filmed a documentary in Penn. That's how she was more like really familiar with it. Was she was already there? She had documented the square
Mhm.
dancers.
Oh, very cool.
And like the whole community, but it was like, so that's like a real thing. So the fact that the whole town was like, "We're going to the square dancing," and we're like, "Where are all the adults?" Like that's
Yeah.
real. They really just go
Go
off.
dance. Yeah.
So
That's so fun.
yeah.
Yeah, this is such a fun movie. And it's so real too. Like the impact, like I don't know what the long-term impact is overall, but like the having, representation is so important. Cause like, especially since this movie was about like finding yourself an identity, they're
Mhm.
like giving that to more people who can see the movie and see themselves on screen. And like that's a big deal.
Yeah, and feel empowered by that, like, that's
Hmm.
what happened with Micah, like, she went through that whole thing, and in the end, she's, like, going out hunting with her dad and pushing that forward, and then using that to bring their culture and traditions into the present, like, she gets, like, the food
Yeah.
kinda thing, which, just showed, like, "Oh, we can blend this, like, I can be proud of this and,
Hmm.
still keep to tradition in a way that, like, is beneficial to me and
Hmm.
my age."
And yeah, there's like pride there too that like can honestly like people probably see themselves in the movie and are like, I can learn to accept myself and be proud of stuff too.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was cute. I really enjoyed it. I my autism always has that little thing with the acting, but I got over it and I was like, you're so right, it's so good. You're but I was just like, ah, but it was, you know, not
Yeah.
everyone's brain does what mine does, and I
It's
think
not
they
the
did an
devil
amazing job.
pass nonsense, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. No, it was worth it, and it was really good. And they just did like it was just so fun to like watch them grow throughout. I was
Yeah,
happy.
and put on
Yeah,
that makeup, and they were like, "Alright,
yeah. I'm gonna
I got
go
this
kick some
cool
butt.
staff that's like" oh, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was just a really fun time, and I think it's also like one of those films too, where it's like it was scary, but like not so scary that like you couldn't show it to younger audiences too.
Mhm,
So like you
mhm.
could definitely show it to a group of like 14-year-olds and not have to be like so terrified they're gonna have like the worst nightmares of their lives. You know what I mean? Like it's a good like gateway horror film too, in that like it wasn't so unbelievably scary that like kids could enjoy it. So I know we always advocate for horror for children. I think this
Yeah.
is like on the list of like if you're in your early adolescence, you could probably enjoy this movie without too much scare. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point. I might show this to the nibblings then.
mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
interested.
yeah. Maybe show them the cover of what the skin monster looks like,
Oh, yeah, so they're
just to
prepared.
gauge. But
Like,
but
"Is this cool? Okay, we'll wait a
because
few
it's
years."
like, but they do a good job like not focusing like so heavily on showing that. Like they are
Yeah,
scary, but like it does still feel like, this is young. It's like for kids a little
yeah,
bit in that
it's somewhere
way.
camp
So
for sure.
yeah, for sure. So maybe but definitely show them the cover because I was scared of the skin monsters
That's really
as a
valid,
grown
you're
adult
right.
just to see. Um,
That's so real.
you'll have to you'll have to let me know. I'm interested to know if it does
Yeah, if
scare
they're
them.
cool. Yeah.
Um, because like, okay, this is very tangent, but I used to get scared of like Wishbone, like the
Oh,
show
yeah,
Wishbone, which is like not that scary. But they showed like anything in like the dark that came out that was like a monster. I was
Mhm.
like, nightmares. I had many nightmares about the show
Yeah.
Wishbone when I was a kid,
Like,
like
I
things
couldn't
which
even
are not
see
scary. So I don't know.
the intro to Are You Afraid of the Dark? Just the one
Yeah.
creepy swing, I was like, "I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
out." So, totally real, totally real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
not torture the children. I will ask them,
Yeah. But
show
maybe they'll
them
be
what
like, ooh,
with
that
it.
looks cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Alright. Take it away.
But into my facts section. This one was really fun time. It had so much cool stuff going on, lots of interesting history, lore, relationships, character development, and very terrifying monsters that wear the skin of your neighbors. What is really fun about this film is that the children really are the stars, and they absolutely kick butt against these very scary adult monsters. That like my favorite part was that the kids just do it all. And fighting flesh-stealing aliens is a hard thing to do, which anyone who has seen the thing or equivalent kind of movies knows. It took a lot of grown adults to win against those aliens. Most of them die in the thing. Like, it is hard to defeat the flesh aliens. And the reason this film really fits with our identity series is that the entire story is centered on this coming of age story with these young girls as they learn to accept themselves for who they are and where they come from. Something that is already like really challenging to do, but they get to do it also while fighting the scariest aliens. I don't know if I've ever seen, but I was being a little dramatic there. But they're definitely very scary. So why are these aliens in the movie so unsettling? It kind of ties back into anything that you kind of see that like looks anthropomorphic or like humanoid that isn't quite right. Like
Mhm.
most body stealing horror as well, the motivation behind the fear of these flesh wearing aliens is multifaceted. There's a lot of fear around being replaced, fear of assimilation or loss of self/autonomy. There's also this fear associated with seeing something masquerading as human, like a humanoid creature, that provides that like kind of uncanny valley, like
Mhm.
uneasiness. And these monsters, as Gabe said, don't do a fantastic job masquerading as humans either, and that like they just don't fit well into the skin they wear. They shift very uncomfortably, and the skin itself like falls on the tentacle insides in a way that looks like loose and lumpy and just like ah.
E
The faces hold like no expression except for like this kind of like pancakey, agape face that has like no expression, and the eyes like have these like gaping holes. It's very scary. And then like every so often from one of those holes, tentacles emerge, and that's also the
Of
worst.
course.
But in this instance, I think like they weren't the star of the movie. Is the star is definitely these girls in their journey to like self acceptance. So I think in this instance, the aliens kind of act as a parallel to their journey, as they learn to love who they are and where they come from. And this is like further solidified when thinking that the aliens leave like right away once the girls have embraced who they are and fight back
So
against their
real.
feelings of self doubt and self hatred. There's like back up into
Yeah.
the meat ship. Goodbye. They win because they learn to
Howdy.
love themselves. So like it's just like I think they definitely was like very parallel to that. And also like they got rid of the bad cop, which is good, but they also got rid of
Mhm.
the like
The good
nice
cop.
yeah.
Well, because ACAB.
Yeah, because ACAB. But like, yeah, so there's like a lot going on there. And arguably, like in their journey to self-discovery, there were some casualties, but they do gain a lot of like positive things for the community by the end of it. So there's a lot of mythology integrated into this film. And just as a blatant disclaimer, I'm very obviously not from this culture, so I should not be taken as the authority on this topic. I learned about this information from the internet as well as through this movie. And I'm sure there are many nuances and things that I just don't have the capacity to understand because I am an outsider to this culture. In providing this information, I am hoping to encourage you to learn and seek knowledge and to not let me speaking about this be your final stop. Essentially like learn about stuff is a great form of rebellion. Lots of information about non-white cultures in general have people have gone through extensive lengths to make sure that like you don't know stuff, by trying to like get rid of these populations. So in learning about them, you're doing a little rebellion. So in an interview with director Nyla Nuksuk, this is the same one Gabe spoke about, I just kind of pulled a different quote. They spoke on the mythology and how that was integrated throughout the film. In the article or interview, they ask, can you talk about the roles of contemporary sci-fi and traditional Inuit monster stories that play out in the film? And Anuk goes in and they say that there's an element of traditional Inuit myth in there. Certainly, the idea of storytelling and sharing scary stories with your friends is something that was very common to me and my friends. When you're from the north, where the environment is so harsh, our scary stories are comparatively terrifying. So the stories that were told as kids, like don't get too close to the ice edge, or the Gualapalik will snatch you, um, kind of like resonate. So the I'm going to go into like a bunch of different lore and kind of scary stories. But the Qualapalak, or in the interview, they say have long hair, green skin, and they'll steal children and put them in their mouths and bring them underwater and potentially keep them forever. There's all of these terrifying stories in all of these everyday scenarios. I think when you're growing up in a place like that, those kinds of magic just seep into the everyday, especially when you're at an age where you're believing in that kind of stuff a little bit. And after looking into some of the mythology, the Qualapalak specifically further, I was linked through the interview to in the same website that we found the interview with the director, there is like an overview. They give this like really handy guide as your guide to monsters and Inuit art, and the InuitArtFoundation.org. And they provide images by Inuit artists accompanied by like brief overviews. And I just kind of pulled 5 of them, the first 5 specifically. So the list kind of goes on. The website has like a lot of really interesting information. They kind of position themselves as a like housing space for art, Inuit art and lore
Mhm.
and stories. And so I just pulled some. I recommend reading about the rest of them. So the one that is mentioned that Gabe was talking about, the Qualupalik, specifically the one that steals children. I'm going to like speak the words that are exactly on the website so I don't mess up the lore.
Mhm.
But these are direct quotes. So they say, venturing near the flow edge of in spring as the pack ice drifts can be a dangerous endeavor, complicated even further by what lies beneath. Clad in eider down or duck skin amuti, which is a woman's parka, the malevolent humanoid Qualupalik are said to live under the ice, waiting with sinuous tendrils and
Mhm.
sinister claws to carry away children who play too close to the fringe of the northern sea. Rarely seen but often heard, they whisk their prey away on their backs to caves deep in the Arctic waters. In some tellings, particularly for inland communities, the Qualipalak also dwell in the depths of certain lakes. In others, the creatures are said to take form of various Arctic animals to trick
Mm.
victims into approaching the boundary between land and sea. Yet, in each instance of the cautionary tale, is used to warn children of the dangers inherent in the northern landscape, an echoing knock on the breaking sheets of ice signals both the natural and supernatural threat waiting below.
Mhm.
Um,
Probably
and
now
there's
more than ever with the melting ice.
Yeah, just lots of like, I guess like lots of things where people go missing, and that's very scary. And also,
Mhm.
yeah, the changing environment. It's just kind of like don't go out into the wilderness by yourself.
Mhm.
Uh, so they on the website that I pulled from, there's a lot of really cool art. Highly recommend going to look at it. Some of them look kind of scary. Some of them just look really cool. The one image is like the green hair and face and like the tendrils definitely
Mhm.
is present. So it's just really cool to look at. There's another lore specifically called Pasagate. I'm definitely do not speak this language, as Gabe also said for their section. So I'm doing the best. If we know any creators or people from the actual language, definitely let us know what we say wrong.
Yeah.
um, but the next one is a giant, specifically known that tower above humans have traveled and left their mark across the Arctic, their footprints still visible on the land, some malevolent, some kind. The giants have been the subject of many stories and told in artworks made by Inuit people. There are stories of giants who were so large that they would mistake polar bears for foxes
Hmm.
and bowhead whales for seals. The famous giant is said to be able to walk across mountains in one step, and later adopted a human son to help him pick lice as big as lemmings from his head. Some say that giants sleep for hundreds of years, and that if you see a mountain on an otherwise featureless terrain, it may be a giant deep in slumber. So
That's
that one was
rad.
kind of cool.
That's cute.
Yeah. A little less like kidnappy scary time. And we're just like, that's neat.
Yeah, more just appreciation for nature, you
Yeah.
know? Kinda like when we did, with the hidden people in Iceland, or
hmm
where it was like, "Okay, there's, like, some magical thing here, we should respect it."
Yeah. No, for 100%. The next one, all of them kind of have like the ability to be like malevolent or scary. The next one is the Turngate. They are rarely seen, but are responsible for much activity, both malignant and benevolent. While they are known to invite native people to their cave dwellings and mountains and cliffs to trap and eat them, these beings can also be helpful when summoned by a powerful shaman in times of need. The Turngate are shapeshifters of sorts and can take on a multitude of forms. Some are only visible to the shaman that summoned them, while others take an almost demonic look with barred teeth, horns, and long talons. Still others are unassuming and appear harmless, a tactic that helps lure people back to their homes.
Mm.
The Torngat Mountains in Nunavik are given their name because they're said to be home of these spirits.
Hmm.
And there's two more. So the next one is the Kajut Tajut. The knocking heard on ice walls of an igloo is cause for alarm, for it is believed that those who behold the ominous visitor will soon fall ill. Lurking outside is the creature, a head with no body and no arms, just feet. In place, in place of cheeks, she bears breasts on her chin, a vulva, and a vulva.
Okay.
So you have that. A similar creature uh, takes the same form, but also wears facial tattoos. So these creatures
Okay.
linger in the igloos abandoned by migrating camps, surprising people who enter looking for a place to stay. The figure was an ongoing source of inspiration for
This one creator.
this one creator who depicted her in countless sculptures and nearly a dozen prints. Me Too, which is their last name, imagines the creature with a family and shows her giving birth and singing atop an igloo. Despite these sometimes joyous depictions, the artist calls her evil. And his sons, Isa and Johnny, have also dedicated a significant part of their practices to representing these figures who haunt the Ungava Peninsula.
That one's right wild. That one's like the Green Man. Remember we
Hmm.
saw the Green Man and then the opposite was the, like, fertile woman from
Oh yeah,
Men?
yeah, yeah. In the
Like
movie
that.
Men, yeah.
Yeah.
The last one was the one that you spoke on, Gabe, the
Yeah.
Mahaha. Uh,
My favorite.
so if you hear a haunting giggle carried by the Arctic wind,
I love him.
it may mean that the terrifying Mahaha is near. With a menacing smirk, horrifying teeth, and immersive razor sharp talons, this being wears a twisted smile while it stalks lone travelers during the winter months, impervious to the cold. Uh, it's a relatively small creature and is routinely depicted wearing little clothing and almost always barefoot with icy blue eyes that peer out from beneath a long, tangled mane. Perhaps most notable are its elongated fingers and similarly prolonged nails that it uses to tickle victims to death. Okay, it does say it, all while grinning from ear to ear. However, this cruel figure is easily fooled. An elder suggests tricking the Mahaha into sharing one last drink by the water's edge, where soon to be victims can push the creature into the rushing currents to escape. Um,
Clever.
yeah, you don't want to get tickled. You want to push them into the water. um, but yeah, so it's just a lot of interesting information. And the website had a lot more, even like within it. Highly recommend just checking it out. And yeah, learn about stuff as much as you can. There's also
Yeah.
in one of the articles, like it listed like a video where someone like narrated and gave you like visuals, specifically of the one they mentioned in the film, the
Mhm.
Qualapalak. That was the narration was like made it even scarier. There was like this creature that pulls children into the water. So yeah, it's like
That's so
definitely
cool.
like creepy and cool. And there's like sets up very naturally to have horror movies made about these kinds of things. So
Yeah.
hopefully more creators will, keep inspiring and doing stuff like that. But yeah, learned a
Yeah.
little bit of stuff. So that was cool.
Yeah, yeah, there, I wish I could find the video, but while we were watching it, I found on TikTok again because I get a lot of, like, Inuit art
Hmm.
or history, and someone was sharing, like, how, like, their, origin story, like, of humanity, like, people, and how, they came to be, and it just really shows, like, their appreciation for the land and for the animals and how they
Hmm.
respect it and like try to make use of everything that they can from the animals and don't take more than they need. And I think
Hmm.
there's just like having that tied so specifically to their history and like their folklore really inspires them to keep that going. And it's
Hmm.
just something that like the Americans don't got that, like we came and it was ours, right? Like that's like if
Yeah.
you talk about Christianity, right? It's like you got here, everything was made for you. You get to be
Hmm.
in charge of everything, so you just take, 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 take. And
Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting comparison, and we get just so tired of hearing the same stories of those the same monsters that we know, like vampires and all that, or even just like a very like the Christian like centric vampires,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
Wimoto Nayoka of Dusky Projects is always talking about that. Like
Yeah.
they're
And I mean,
another
if you're
culture.
only ever ingesting capitalistic stories that really are like Christian based stories, like even,
Hmm.
you're not going to like learn that there are other possibilities. A lot of reasons people will stay in a certain way of living is because they don't know other things exist. So you need art that gives you different narratives and stories so that you can like actually learn that there could be a different way so that we don't have to live in this
Hmm.
capitalistic hellscape forever. You
Yeah.
know, that there's different ways of existence that exist, and ways of life that are less damaging to the earth and the planet and each other.
Hmm.
So, in
That's
learning
so
about
real.
them, you learn to not perpetuate harmful things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, love and appreciate. Like we're here. We might as well like leave the earth better than we found it, right?
Hmm.
For those to come. And yeah, in the future I really do hope to do a folklore series, specifically covering, folklore from, countries and cultures that I
Not
am not a part
often.
of,
Yeah.
right? Or even, we could do some Latine. Like I find some of those stories really fascinating because I didn't grow up with a lot of them.
Hmm.
So even just like that's a way for me to learn and connect to my own culture. And so
Hmm.
if you listeners, make sure you like and subscribe, leave us some comments, and if you watch this film, let us know what you feel about it. But also if you know of or are a part of certain cultures that have really interesting folklore, that are not based in Christianity, let us
Yeah.
know so that we can, start taking notes of what to cover in the future. If there's a film that is related to that, or that you suggest a book or anything like
Yeah.
that, let us know. I'm ever fascinated by even just to learn in my own life.
Hmm.
I finished a book where it was like indigenous monster attacking
Hmm.
them, and I was like, this is so, and it's kind of similar to that where they did not use like one, they killed this deer when they
Hmm.
shouldn't have in a
Yeah.
place that they shouldn't have, and then they didn't successfully use every part of her.
Yeah.
And she was also pregnant. There's all these aspects to it where it was like you disrespected her and now she kill everybody.
Yeah.
She came back and she killed everybody. So
Yeah.
highly recommend that. But like things like that, like if you know of
Yeah.
a book or a movie or show or like story, I think it would even be cool to talk to people who just like come on and share like what they grew up with listening
Oh,
to.
yeah, that would be really cool. And also, like, we wouldn't have heard of this film. Well, we probably would have, like, just through the Twitterverse, but or whatever that we ingest media from. But like, we got this recommended to us, so
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
it does end up influencing what we ended up talking about. So if you know, as Gabe said, know any cool films, know books, tell us about them.
Yeah.
We're just vessels trying to endlessly consume media and knowledge in a
Yeah.
way that is ideally respectful.
Yeah,
Always
and
our
then
intent.
just share that and
Mhm.
hopefully infect you, with the desire to learn more as
Yeah.
well. If you know bands like Hallucination, let me know. Let me know, let Jeff know. We're here, we're ready, we wanna hear them. They're so cool. Please look them up. Shout
Yeah.
out to them. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Watch this movie.
Yes, watch this movie, please.
Yeah.
Get it all the views that it needs, and I hope, Inuksuk makes more films. I'm here, I'll watch it. I'll watch them. And now that we have, like, the whole that, Jeff Barnaby left behind, we
Mhm.
we ha need more indigenous stories.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
Awesome. Well, don't get married.
Eat your kids.
Uh-huh. Or
Mhm.
they'll take your skin and try to eat your kids, and your kids will protect
Win.
the whole town.
Yeah. They'll be
They'll do a
great.
protect.
Yeah. Can't let doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Really just finding themselves, but also making the aliens leave.
Yeah. Love
Yeah.
it. Okay. Bye.